Welcome to Copy Chief Radio. Today's show is a new breed episode where today's most innovative marketing and copywriting stars share their most effective methods for optimizing results in the fast-changing world of direct response marketing. To check out all the Copy Chief Radio episode types, go to copychief.com/CCR. Hey, what's up? It's Kev. Hot one today. Eddie Sheylner's here, and I'm just meeting Eddie. But man, the reason I wanted to have him on is because he's done something that I root for all copywriters to do, which is establish a presence and growing a list very simply by teaching what they're learning. We're all, as copywriters, learning all the time. I couldn't stop somebody from learning if it's one of the things I coach people to do is like, stop learning. Just So if we're going to be this way, we should share it. And two amazing things happen when you do that. You establish your presence and you learn better, right? By having to sort of filter through what you're learning. That's why I started a blog. I just was lonely. I didn't have a friend who wanted to hear all this copywriting stuff. And I just started teaching what I was learning, what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong. And Eddie's done an amazing job at verygoodcopy.com. He's got a huge loyal following. And so, Eddie, it's great to meet you, man. And I appreciate you coming on to share how you've done this.
Oh, man, it's great to meet you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Let's just start where it began. You found copywriting. Were you working as a copywriter before you started Very Good Copy?
I was. I started, I was a literature major. I studied 20th century literature in college. I graduated. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write books. I wanted to write short story anthologies. That's what I aspired to do, but it's very hard to break into that. Yeah. So when I graduated, I got a job in sales. I was doing inside sales, and it generally made me unhappy, not because I don't like sales, but because I wasn't writing. And so I was always on the lookout for a writing gig. And then my roommate came home and said that there was a team in his company that was looking for something called a copywriter. I was like, what is that? Anyway, so I got that job. I got that job on the back of the English degree. That's where I discovered what this was. I mean, I was working for a company called Career Builder. I was writing job ads, but they were essentially direct response ads. My worth was based on how often I can get people to click that job and apply to it. So when I discovered that I was doing something called direct response copy, and I realized that, hey, I can make a living writing this way, it was really a revelation. I've been exposed to marketing and advertising, but I never really thought about where that advertising comes from, who's creating it.
Right.
It's copywriters. And so that fascinated me. I went down this rabbit hole.
It's so cool. I had similar journey where it was like something got me into marketing. The job a friend gave me an opportunity to kind of learn. So I started to understand business in marketing. I was managing a telemarketing room, which was brutal hell. But man, I learned a lot. Like I was in charge of keeping our BBB rating. So I would have to get on arbitrations and I would make sure all the phone calls were recorded and really got to understand sales. And then somebody turned me on to copywriting the same way. I thought, this is so dumb. Like the first sales letter I ever saw was like, remember back when they were super ugly, and
Yeah.
and I was just like, I don't get why. How does it? This seems like a scam or whatever. But then, then you discover the greats. I think probably happened to you too, right? It's like, then he turns me on to Gary Halbert. And then I discovered John Carlton and Ben Savenga. And then I'm like, oh, now I have this romantic image of these masters who have worked years to get their craft down and they go deep in. It's a lot like being a novel writer, if you think of it that way. Doing tons of research. You got to come up with a story and big ideas. And then it started to get sexy to me.
Yeah. And I really liked what you touched on at the top of the show when you were like, you just teach other people what you're learning, because that is exactly how Very Good Copy started. I mean, my first 50 articles were in a running Google Doc. Nobody's ever seen them. I never intended on showing them to anybody. It was just like, when I started discovering the greats and the folks that you mentioned, Ben Savenga, Carlton, Halbert, Joe Sugarman, when I was picking up those books and reading them and then listening to podcasts like your own for that matter, whenever I would come into an insight, something interesting, a piece of information, I figured, if I can teach this to someone else or communicate this to someone else in writing, do it in a clear and concise way, then maybe I'm ready to use this technique or this principle in my own promotions, And so that's how it started. And it was all in a Google Doc. It was all hidden away until someone was like, why don't you just put this up and see what happens? It didn't like take off right away. I had to market it and everything, but I'm still surprised to this day that, it's resonated the way that it has.
Yeah. What is it now? Let's start there and then we'll go back through how you built it. What is it doing for you now? Give us the numbers like of your following, your list. I want to talk about how you've used LinkedIn and things like that, but like you're working copywriter still, you're working with clients. That's your main like money, or is it this?
I think half of my time and energy is devoted to creating content for very good copy and marketing it and doing all the things that I need to do to market the business essentially and grow the business and really create kind of a body of work, which is a passion in and of itself, I think. Yeah, the other half is creating splits for B2B companies, SaaS companies. People come to me and say, hey, Eddie, we have this email campaign that's underperforming, or we have a landing page that's really important that needs to do better. Can you write a split for it? That's typically the type of client work that I take. And I really enjoy it because it's direct marketing, direct response, copywriting at its core, and it keeps me accountable. Yeah, it's very rewarding.
And so what does the business look like for you now? How are you monetizing very good copy?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a few revenue streams. I mean, there's the client work that I get that just comes inbound. And then I sponsor the newsletter as well. So the newsletter is sponsored every week. And then I sell consultations to people. So people can buy an hour of my time and we can talk about whatever they like. And then I'm working on a course. I'll sell that course when it's ready. I've been taking my time on it, but I want to get it right and I want to do a good job. So taking my time on that, but those are about the 4 revenue streams.
So it's mostly authority, right? It's just like through the newsletter, you people know who you are now. And naturally, with that amount of subscribers, people want you to come do that stuff for them. It's that simple.
It really is. It really is. There's not a lot of bells and whistles to it. I'm a pretty low tech guy. My tech stack is very simple. I have all the essentials, but I'm not using the same technology that, I was the copy chief at G2 for a while, almost 3 years, and they were doing some incredible things there, very, very high level technical growth marketing. I'm not doing that. It's just republishing my work and spreading it around the internet efficiently.
Let's talk about the micro angle. You have micro articles and micro interviews. I did one for you. It was super fun. It was just a few questions that I answered in an email. I love interviews because who doesn't want to talk about themselves? For me, I was trying to respect the premise of it being micro, and I was like really trying to edit myself because I can go, man, when somebody asks me a question. Was that a strategy from the beginning when you launched it? Like, okay, I'm going to make this very consumable.
Well, I think at the very beginning, I was obsessed with brevity and concision, and I wanted to, I was a minimalist. I studied minimalism in college and realism. I was a literature major, like I said, and as you get into your 3rd, especially your 4th year, your professors kind of start pushing you in a certain direction, I was reading a lot of Raymond Carver, Charles Bukowski, Hemingway, John, Steinbeck. I was reading minimalist authors who were particularly using realism and realist techniques. And I don't know if you want me to talk about that, but, that was a kind of a core influence of mine.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into that. Those are some of my favorite authors. So what exactly is realism and how did you see it in their work?
Well, realism is basically when the author does not give the reader any insight into what the character is thinking. The author only tells the reader what the character is doing and saying. Hence, it's more real or realistic. Just like you and I, we're talking right now. I really have no idea what you're thinking. Right. I can infer based on what you're saying and your mannerisms and how you're acting. And so you can do the same thing on paper in a story, in a novel, in a short story, in copywriting. You can tell the reader what the character is doing and what the character is saying. And by not including their thoughts, their internal monologue, you create a void and you create a lack of detail. And when you do that, the reader, consciously or otherwise, fills in that void and fills in those gaps with their own life experience and their own worldview. And that's very powerful because with very few details and very few words and concision, you can actually create mental movies that they're reading black and white on the page, but they're seeing full color in their head because if I were to say, hey, I'm sitting in an office right now, the reader might picture an office that they've been in or that they've had, or maybe the office that their parents had when they were kids, But if I start going into all the details of this office ad nauseum, then it's a different experience. And then they're seeing the world that you've created, which isn't necessarily wrong, but that's more of a minimalist kind of principle. A minimalist principle lets the reader kind of envision for themselves.
Look, I get it. I know there's so many communities, I'm doing air quotes, communities for entrepreneurs out there, all filled with their own version of overnight experts chirping at you from behind the screen. You got your Facebook groups, your clubhouse rooms, just experts galore. How often do you feel like you're being pinballed around from thing to thing and picking up a little bit, a little piece there? How much of that is actually making it into your brain and your fingers and your business and affecting your money? How many of these people are actually out there in the field getting their hands dirty and testing to find out what actually works and what flops? Well, in the Copy Chief community, a real community, you get shoulder to shoulder with the most active, successful marketers working in the trenches today, all while learning from industry legends who rarely teach anywhere else, if ever. Copy Chief is an amazing community, super newbie friendly. Also, you'll find, elite level marketers and copywriters in there. They're all working to become the best at their craft, get paid top dollar for their skills, stay ahead of the competition by keeping their finger on the pulse of what's working now. That's the X factor when you're backed up by a community and you can get any question you have answered by people who actually do this stuff and can tell you from real world experience what to do for your project, for your offer, for your funnel, for your clients. Man, you're unstoppable when you've got that kind of confidence. Go check us out at copychief.com/join. If you've never been a member, you're going to see what you've been missing and you're going to say, where has this been all my life? And if you've been a member in the past, I would invite you to come and check out all the new stuff. We've completely updated all the tech. So we're on brand new platforms. Everything is slick and smooth and easy to access. And it's never been better. Copychief.com/join. I'll look for you inside. That is powerful. And I think that's sort of what creates the bond with the character, because it keeps you engaged because you're kind of trying to figure out what they're thinking. And you only will know through their words and actions, interacting with other characters or things they do, right? So we're getting to watch them. And sometimes we know things they don't know, obviously. That's why we shudder in fear for what they're about to experience. And I've been watching Bosch. Have you seen Bosch?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's so good. It's on Prime. There's 7 seasons of it. I guess now there's a spinoff, but I just found it. And so I gloriously have 5 more seasons to binge. It's a Michael Connelly character, and he's written, I think, 20 novels, Bosch novels. And I had this thought again that I noticed. It occurred to me, at least in hour-long dramas that are, I say they watch like novels, right? It's probably that same effect. And I realized the hero never complains. It's one thing about a hero, especially an action kind of hero. They don't complain. They're always make irreverent comments. They don't very often get shaken up. I'm thinking through the lens of what you just described. That's kind of what it is. It's like that would be their internal dialogue, or you'd see something eating at them. But the fact that they stuff that away for the greater good because they're obsessed with catching the killer, because in Bosch's case, his mother was a prostitute and she was murdered and it's unsolved. And so basically his entire why is to go avenge his mother's death. But he doesn't only go after killers who murder hookers. He goes out, he's a detective. He's a hard-boiled guy. But you just don't see him complain, and you don't see him bitch, or you don't see him take a step back to take care of himself. He's on this mission. Yeah,
it's like the ultimate show don't tell. Going back to your original question regarding the micro angle, I mean, that was just one element of it. But generally, yeah, I saw that. I guess the easiest way to put it is like there was a formula that I was following. There was 3 elements to every article, or every micro article, if you want to call it. So there's a story, then there's the lesson that I was teaching, and then there was the word count. And so the puzzle for me was like, okay, how do I take this story, this anecdote, whatever I'm framing this lesson in, and connect the two, connect the lesson and the story in a certain number of words. And so it became a game that was challenging and interesting, and kind of reminded me of stuff that I would do in college where I would write vignettes. I would take my professor would be like, hey, go take a picture and write the picture. And so when you do that, the picture doesn't need a classic storytelling arc, doesn't need a narrative necessarily, a beginning or a middle or an end. It doesn't necessarily have to have those things. A vignette really just needs to capture the emotion of a moment. That's in large part what I'm trying to do. Is I have this modicum of knowledge when it comes to copywriting and persuasion and storytelling. I come into something in my life, an event, or I read something, or I watch a show or a movie. One of the anecdotes that I come into reminds me of a principle or a technique. And I say, oh, well, here's a pretty natural bridge between this story, which is engaging on its face, and this technique that, people can get a lot of value from if they're trying to learn how to write copy. And so I just try to put those things together. And it started as longer articles. They were, 400, 500 words. But then when I started reposting on LinkedIn, the character count back then, a few years ago, was 1,300 characters.
Oh, wow.
So I realized that if I hit 212 words on average, that would get me right to the end of 1,300. So I was always trying to hit 212 words. I think the work got better because I was saying the same thing in fewer words.
Interesting. I was going to ask, how often do you feel compromised? And do you write the long version first and then chop it up? Or you're just like, nope, if I catch myself going down a side road, I'm turning back?
Well, they've since upped the character count. So it's 3,000. It's 3,000 characters now. So that's more than enough space. So I'm not as rigid with the character count, but I usually try to say everything I need to say in as few words as possible. Whereas before I needed to hit that 212 mark, and I even felt like it was sometimes too short. Now I don't really pay attention to it too much. I just try to do what feels natural. I've written so many of them now that what feels natural is usually right for me.
Yeah, there's no real pattern. A lot of 400s, 500. There's one 1,700. I'm just looking at recent ones. A lot of 200s, some under 200. Yeah,
like
really
the
cool.
1,700 one is just kind of like an anthology. So I put together, I put 12 of them. If I write something that long, then I usually bill it as like a course or a micro course, and I put it inside the newsletter. So I say you have to subscribe to get access to them. And there's like 6 of them right now, 6 or 7. To your question earlier about how I grow the list, that increased the conversion rate a lot when I put a lead magnet there and told people that they were going to get something instantly when they subscribed.
And what is the subscription rate? Is there like a fee to subscribe, or?
Oh, no.
Oh, they just have to sign up to read the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The newsletter it's totally free, and I have sponsors in the newsletter, and so they advertise, and so that's how I monetize the newsletter for the most part. But then I also advertise consultations and people can get in touch with me to work with me through the newsletter. So it's a hub for spokes in the business.
Do you pick the images as well?
I do.
Yeah. Very cool. I like your style. Reminds me a lot of Cole Schaefer. Do you know Cole?
Yeah, I know Cole really well. Yeah. Cole was at my wedding. Good guy.
Really? Oh, you guys are like buddies. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he lived in Chicago as well.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just got to know Cole over the last year or so. Man, he's one of my favorites as well. I could just read he's one of those guys I save every email. I'm like, I'm not foldering this. I'm not, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to make time. Great writer. Rewards me every time. Cool, man. And so can we talk about strategies, list growing strategies real quick between the different platforms? I think that's another thing that a lot of freelancers kind of wonder about. It's like, do I need to be everywhere? Do I need to pick one? What's your main wellspring, and what's your strategy for showing up in the right places?
Well, I think LinkedIn is where I publish the most. I think LinkedIn serves my style the best and my medium the best. It's, I could do it on Twitter, I guess, chop it up, and I have in the past, but it seemed like LinkedIn was resonating with the work the most just because it was the most consumable on there. And so kind of started there. What I do is I create a growth loop from the website to the newsletter to LinkedIn. Basically, I'll take an article, I'll publish it on my website first, then I'll take the text and I'll publish that as an article or a post on LinkedIn, and then I'll take the slug, or I'll take like the URL from the post, and I'll just put it into the newsletter and say, hey, if you like this article, because I'm sending the same newsletter out as well, or the same article in the newsletter out. So I say, hey, if you like this newsletter, you can like it or comment on it on LinkedIn. It'll help me out. By doing that, I'm transferring my audience from my newsletter to LinkedIn, which obviously draws more folks over, whenever somebody likes it or comments on it. And then the first comment in the comment section under the post is a link back to my website. So anybody that doesn't know about Very Good Copy yet can read that introduction in the comment and go and explore the website and subscribe if they like. And then they basically get added to the pool of people that I can transfer over to LinkedIn again. So it's this loop. I think there's been some diminishing returns on it, but certainly in the very beginning, for a while, it was working very, very well.
Very cool. What about Facebook, IG? Do you fuss with those much as separate platforms, or just repurpose there, if that?
No, maybe at some point down the line, I'll do an Instagram project where, maybe I post vignettes on there, or I post something that deviates a little bit from my typical work on Instagram. Yeah. Facebook, I haven't done anything. I've joined a few groups on Facebook, but to be honest with you, it's, it's just me, and I have a business manager that helps me with billing and invoicing and, the administrative stuff that I'm actually really bad at. But when it comes to creating and serving clients and marketing the business, it's just me. So I don't have that much time to be everywhere.
You're goofing around.
Yeah.
I got work to do.
Yeah. So I just focused on LinkedIn.
Well, it's been great, man. I feel like we only scratched the surface here, but man, it was a great conversation, and I appreciate you sharing how you're doing this. And good for you, keeping it simple. I have a team of 10 now. And so I'm always like, oh man, I remember when it was just me, and the beauty of it was that I could wake up, have a thought, write an email, get it out that day, that moment, and be having a conversation. Mm-hmm. And I could still do that, but now that people want to tag things and segment and thing, and it's a slower moving machine. And I always admire when somebody keeps it simple, because it's easy to let it get bigger and let it get complicated.
Well, I appreciate it very much. It means a lot coming from you. I've been listening to you and learning from you for a while now, and admire everything you've done and built. So thank you very much for the compliment. It means a lot.
I appreciate it. It was great meeting you. Eddie Sheylner at verygoodcopy.com. You're going to love it. Go get on his list and get all the good stuff. We'll talk again soon, Eddie.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/copychiefradio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. copychief.com/CCR.